All right, number 20. I will read my 3x5 trading card before each and every trade. I've forgotten I wrote this card and I have not been looking at this card. But I would recommend you have this little card, something like this, okay? And I'm just rereading this for the first time in a few years. I, Dave Landry, will take the best ogre and trend trades, even if this means passing on okay opportunities and watching them occasionally take off without me. Kind of interesting. This is what I should be doing because I do get sucked into a day trade every now and then. I don't consider an ogre as a day trade, but I kind of consider it as something that's it kind of dovetails in with the core methodology, like you just saw in a minute, because you've got the pullback and you've got the strong trend and you have all these things. You got this huge, bigger picture pattern working behind you, as opposed to trying to catch every zig and zag. And you know, I'm in front of all these screens. I don't know how many there are. There's a lot, probably more than I need. But anyway, this, I'm going to come back to this in 1 second, but I was just thinking out loud, this one little thing might slow you down if you had to pick up that card and read it before you placed any and every trade. Now, you have the cerebellum, I think. I should have studied my notes on this before I went live, versus the amygdala. Now, the cerebellum is what makes you, you. It looks like a brain. I should have grabbed my brain. I forgot that. I forget that I'm on video here. So this is a brain I bought a while back. And inside the cerebellum, it's kind of like that. I forget how it is. I think this is what they do. This is a cerebellum, and this is amygdala and the lizard brain, all the accoutrements of that. And there's a cerebellum. And that little tiny part of your brain often keeps you alive, okay? Whereas the bigger part is what gives you a conscience and makes you you. Now, the little part is really fast acting, and it has to be, because if you're getting ready to step off a curb in front of a cab, remember the yellow ones don't stop, as Elf explained, you're not gonna think, oh, is this guy not like me, and why is he driving so fast, and what's blah blah blah. By that time you're dead. So it's very fast acting to keep you out of trouble. Unfortunately, it doesn't think much. It doesn't have time to think, okay? So it can make you do stupid shit. It involves a lot of emotions in your brain. And I couldn't understand how that part of your brain could be so emotional. And then I got to thinking about it, and maybe I read a little more neurology or whatever, but it fires off other parts of your brain that make you even more emotional. The more emotional parts of that, what is that, 8 pounds or whatever, sloshing around up there. So that part of your brain keeps you from doing stupid shit. And that emotional part, that amygdala, that so-called lizard brain, okay, because it looks like a lizard brain, looks like an alligator brain, which we should have some alligators in the neighborhood soon. Whenever somebody visits, we hop in the bikes and go right around the neighborhood looking for alligators, especially people from like California have never seen an alligator. Anyway, so you want to let the amygdala keep you alive, okay, but don't let it control your life. That's the little brain, right? No pun intended. So here's the question. How long does it take to go from here to here, okay? Well, believe it or not, only 2 to 3 seconds. So a little pause, and what did I do with that? Oh, here it is. A little pause might be all you need. So one thing I'd recommend you do is, and read your card might be the only thing you do, but you might want to wind the clock. So this is a little, I bought this years ago as a prop, or just to kind of have on my desk. It's all dusty and all, but it's I guess it came out of a Cessna. It's an old analog airplane clock. I don't know if it works or not. Anyway, the reason I bought this is because I'm a nerd, but Greg Morris was talking about when he was in the fighter simulators, and they try to trip you up. They try to fail you out of flight school, okay? Because they don't want somebody that's going to be real emotional, and they want to weed you out as quickly as possible. So they put you in a simulator and they F-put you really bad, right? And it's easy to get excited and crash the simulator or whatever. Better to crash the simulator than crash a jet plane, right? Well, a few years back, let me try to make the story as short as possible. I was having dinner with Greg in New York. I think it was doing one of the Traders Expos, and he was just visited because he wanted to have dinner with me and Larry and a few other people. Might have been his birthday or something, and he wanted to together with the gang. And he goes, what are you going to talk about tomorrow, Dave? And I said, well, I'm going to talk about how sometimes it just takes a few seconds to go from the lizard brain to the big brain, and just take a few seconds before trade. You might not do something stupid and emotional. And he said, wind the clock. And then he explained to me that in the simulators, when the shit would hit the fan, he would let everything happen, okay? Kind of like that rain thing, right? And he would reach in and wind the clock on the dashboard. I guess he was flying F4s back then, and they had an analog clock. And he said that years later in the airlines, when the shit would hit the fan, he'd touch the console or whatever they call it, and take a breath and then react, okay? You got to slow down that automated, emotional, crazy part of your brain to get to the rest of what's sloshing around up there. And he did. He went on to tell me a story that, and then he sent a longer version of the story, which I read recently, where he's coming into Dulles, I think, in Washington, and they're in a holding pattern because of the weather's really bad. So they're flying around. The co-pilot had the plane, and the co-pilot says, we lost an engine. And he says, do you want me to shut it down? And Greg goes, no, my plane, which means I'm in control now. So Greg took the yoke or whatever, took the wheel, whatever you call it. I don't know what they call it. Stick. I guess the steering wheel, whatever, in an airliner. And they didn't shut the engine down. They shut down the generator, which was connected to the engine. And the reason you didn't shut the engine down is you got two engines on the plane. If you shut the wrong engine down, especially low like they were, the plane's going to drop like a rock, and you might not get that engine started again. So he went on to tell the co-pilot, like, no, do not touch that engine. Leave it alone. We're going to leave it on, okay? And if we get a flame out or something, we're going to deal with it then. We'll shut it down then. But no, do not shut that engine down. Took over the plane, and he landed safely, and no one was the wiser. The next day, he got grilled, okay? Why did you do this? And why didn't you go to this airport? Because this airport would be an emergency thing or whatever. He goes, I had it under control. He even told, because he had it under control, he even called the tower and said, please get all those fire trucks off of the runway. I don't want to freak out the people on the plane. So he landed safely. Anyway, long story endless, next day he's getting grilled, and he's filling out paperwork, and they're asking him all these questions, and just peppered with questions. And he says, look, I want you to call the head of the FAA and ask him these same questions. And what's ironic or crazy about the situation was there's only 3 people that knew about this up until now, obviously. And that was him, his co-pilot, and the guy in the jump seat. The guy in the jump seat was the head of the FAA. And after he landed, the only thing the guy said was he slapped him on the back and said, nice job, Captain, and walked out. And so he said that after he told him to call the head of the FAA, he never heard back. So anyway, wind the clock, okay? So that's what he did in that situation. Long story endless, again, is that he said, okay, we could get into a lot of trouble here if we shut down that engine. Let's just think through this and not make that emotional response. Okay, Nick says, do you think individual stock picking can outperform longer term trend following like TFM on indices? Absolutely. So Nick is saying, like, can you just pick individual stocks and have them do better overall? Yeah, that's our whole goal. Otherwise, why bother? That's why I have the trading service. And the idea is to catch the occasional outlier that goes up several 100%, or maybe it doesn't happen often, but maybe catch something like that one in the Landry 100 that went up 400%. So yeah, that's the ultimate goal, is to capture some inefficient moves. And that's why we trade these inefficient stocks that are a little wild and crazy, but we adjust for the volatility, okay?